Hey guys, happy Monday. Welcome back to Read Aloud with Miss Godfrey. I'm so glad that you are joining me today. It is a beautiful day here in East Tennessee. I am missing all of my students terribly. Don't know if you're missing Miss Godfrey, but I'm missing you guys. Shout out to everybody still following along with our Read Aloud of Schooled by Gordon Korman. I do know two faithful Prospect Tiger Cubs, or are y'all the Tiger Cubs? Sorry if I got that one wrong, but Prospect Tiger Cubs, the Bailey family who are listening to this every day. Shout out to my mom who's also listening. Shout out to Mary Teef Taylor who's listening, and shout out to my students who are sporadically listening. So we're still going strong. We're going to be on chapter 17 today of Schooled. Today's chapter is from the perspective of Mrs. Donnelly. When we last left off, Cap had gotten some checks from the school principal, and the purpose of those checks was to, if you remember, to pay for the school dance. And Mr. Kasigi, the principal, went ahead and signed all the checks, so all Cap has to do is write an amount for them. And if you remember, we left off, he was going to buy the bracelet that was in the window of this store. The bracelet was exactly like the one that Sophie Donnelly's dad was going to give her. So we're thinking that maybe Cap is going to buy that for her. So we're picking up chapter 17 today, Mrs. Donnelly's perspective. So let's see what Mrs. Donnelly has to say today, and let's read together. All right, here we go. It says, I left 4 messages for Frank Kasigi before he finally called me back. He was apologetic. Sorry, Flora, you know I'm chairing the principal's conference this year, and it's just details. Sorry to bother you when you're so busy. I thought I'd better check up on Cap Anderson. Has he been fitting in any better? Fitting into what? He asked. The age of Aquarius? I felt my heart sink. That bad, huh? Actually, not really. I had the boy pegged as a train wreck, but considering how odd he is and how sheltered his life has been, things could have been a lot worse. Does he have friends? I asked hopefully. Not friends exactly, more like followers. Followers? Yeah, ever since that stunt with the school bus, the kids just flocked to him. He put together a tie-dye clinic with the art teacher. You wouldn't believe the turnout. It was, he chuckled. What did they call big events back in the 60s? A happening, I replied automatically. Right, and that's the least of it. He picks up a guitar in the music room and strums a few old Beatles tunes, and pretty soon he's got 20 people in there singing along. He's running some kind of martial arts class out on the front lawn. He's got more kids working on the Halloween dance that will probably even show up that night. He's even got a few mediators. If I didn't know the kid's history, I'd probably have the police making sure he wasn't setting up some kind of cult. It triggered an explosion of images from my own childhood at Garland. Cult was exactly the word for it, with Rain as its philosopher and guru. Still, the news made me breathe easier. That's a load off my mind. When I found out they made him 8th grade president, well, Sophie filled me in on what that might mean. I've heard those rumors too, he admitted. It certainly hasn't gone smoothly for the last few in that office, but we don't want to be the only middle school in America with no student government. So we threw the dice, and this time we actually lucked out. Thank heavens. But maybe I should have realized that Cap was holding his own in his new life. He was still a fish out of water, but he didn't seem to be quite so thrown by every little thing as he had been when I'd first brought him home. One major clue was the fact that he was taking a genuine interest in that school. As a social worker, I kept current yearbooks from all the buildings in my district. Not only was Cap borrowing the Claveridge books, but he was spending hours studying them. Imagine a boy who had never even had a single classmate now wanting to know more about more than 1,000 of them. I found it heartwarming. Things were even thawing slightly between Cap and my daughter. Mind you, that had more to do with a change in Sophie than a change in Cap. She was in a better state of mind because her father had finally remembered to send back her extremely belated birthday present, duly engraved. Ooh, truth be told, I had never expected to see that bracelet again, and I don't think that Sophie had either. So imagine my surprise when she opened a padded mailer with no return address and pulled out that silver bangle. There was no card, not even a scribbled note, and the only thing that spoke for this gift was the engraving inside of it. It said, "All you need is love." To be honest, the inscription threw me a little. It certainly didn't sound like the Bill Donnelly I used to be married to. His idea of being sentimental was the presentation of the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the Super Bowl. But I guess he could still surprise me. He certainly got this one right because Sophie was thrilled. It almost made up for the fact that he had walked out on her life yet again. Even with the new, kinder, gentler Sophie, Cap was still a whole lot nicer to her than she was to him. He probably had a crush on her. An attractive high school girl had to look good to an 8th grader, especially one who had barely laid eyes on a female who was not his grandmother. I couldn't prove that, of course, but one day I came home from work and the two of them were on the couch in front of Trigonometry and Tears, that awful teen soap opera geared to the interest level of chimpanzees and various species of plant life. A steamy makeout scene was taking place on the screen. Sophie was watching intensely. And more to the point, Cap was watching Sophie. He was a difficult one to read, but I believed he was trying to work up the guts to lean over and put his arms around her. So I slammed my briefcase down on the kitchen counter, and said the first thing I could think of. "Who's up for a nice tall glass of lemonade?" "Mother," Sophie exclaimed in exasperation, "what century is this?" I told myself I was protecting my daughter, but the truth is I was protecting Cap from what Sophie would have done to him if he had actually made a move on her. The pain of my own adjustment from Garland was decades in the past, but it still felt like yesterday when I watched this poor boy. I took Frank Casigi at his word when he said that Cap was doing well. But I knew I wouldn't sleep at night until he was once again with Rain, hopping back toward the 60s as fast as her pinned hip would carry the both of them. Alright guys, that was a short chapter. Again, Mrs. Donnelly's perspective and Schooled by Gordon Korman. So we see that Cap, I'm guessing, did in fact buy the bracelet for Sweet Sophie, or Not So Sweet Sophie, and had it engraved. And Mrs. Donnelly kind of hints at something. She's like, the inscription, the engraving doesn't quite sound like Sophie's dad, but maybe he's just being nice. So we'll see if maybe Sophie or Mrs. Donnelly ever find out that it was Cap that sent it versus her dad. So stay tuned for that. That's all today, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Read Aloud with Miss Godfrey. I miss each and every one of you. I hope you and your families are doing well. I'm praying for all of you. Go out and enjoy this beautiful day, and I will see you back here tomorrow. See you later. Bye.